Well, motorists can expect some relief in July. The Automobile Association predicts the price of petrol will drop by 86 cents a litre in July. For more on this, I'm joined by Leighton Beard from the AA of South Africa. Leighton, thank you so much for joining us. Has this got to do with lower international oil prices?
Yeah, spot on, Marcel. That's exactly what it is due to. We've had a look at the oil prices over the last couple of weeks, and for most of June the oil price retreated and is giving us some really good news going into July. So the bulk of what we are seeing is really due to those international oil prices. They're steady at around $63 a barrel, and for now it's really good news and filtering through to the South African consumer.
Now, how are we looking at this if we look at the broader picture of South Africa's economy, and especially the rand? The fuel price drop would have been even more significant if the rand hadn't weakened?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we look at those numbers, if the rand had not lost as much ground as it did in June, this decrease could have been even more significant. We could have been looking at a rand in terms of petrol. We're at the moment predicting an 86-cent decrease a litre in petrol and 68 cents for diesel. But had the rand played the game with us this month, we could really have seen an even more significant decrease. As it is, though, Marcel, 86 cents and 68 cents, A, it's not an increase, and B, it's a pretty good decrease, especially in the context of the increases we've had this year already. So I think all in all, consumers and motorists could be quite happy with this news that's coming through. And I mean, we've seen that the rand has also strengthened by around about 0.5% today. Whether that's going to have a major impact going into July, I think we'll have to look at those figures again tomorrow. But that may also play into our hands. But I think for now, a significant decrease, anything over 85 cents, I think is really going to be welcome.
Is it too soon to ask what the outlook is for the rest of the year? Because things economically and politically around the world is just so volatile at the moment.
No, you're absolutely correct, Marcel. I mean, when we look at, for instance, the geopolitical situation and the tensions between the USA and Iran, if those tensions escalate and, they are ratcheted up, there's no telling what could happen to international oil prices. I mean, what we don't want to see is what we saw at the beginning of the decade, where we were trading oil at $100 a barrel. I mean, that would be catastrophic for South African fuel users. So we don't want to return to that situation. If oil does uptick and the price becomes a lot more expensive than it is now, then it is obviously going to filter back into the South African economy, and our consumers are going to feel it. What we've seen as well with the rand today, it moved from around 14.35 rand at around lunchtime, and it's currently trading at around 14.15 rand. So it really has strengthened. So you ask me the question of what are we looking at towards, maybe in August and September towards the end of the year. Unfortunately, I don't have that crystal ball. When the rand has volatile swings, as we've seen at the moment, within a week's period of time, to predict what's going to happen in a month or so is virtually impossible. I think from our point of view, what we'd like to see is that the rand stabilizes, that there's economic policy certainty in the country, that there's an investor climate, and that the rand obviously remains strong against the US dollar. And then on the international geopolitical scene, obviously we wouldn't want to see those tensions ratcheted between the USA and Iran, and that situation obviously resolves itself, and that international oil remains at the level it is at the moment. Those two factors being equal, I think the outlook would look pretty good going into the rest of the year.
Now, we speak about consumers, and we speak mainly about people who are having to put petrol into their cars. But you and I both know that when we've seen these kinds of decreases, as helpful as they are, we don't see a big retailers taking that into consideration and, for instance, impacting the price of food that we've seen go up when the petrol prices have gone up.
So, I mean, I think when you're looking at fuel increases, obviously there is an immediate effect on the agricultural sector, for instance, on the manufacturing sector, and they try and recover those losses through increased prices at retail. What you don't see is when those prices go down, or when the fuel price goes down, that there's an immediate readjustment of it. I think what we do see is that obviously those sectors are hedging, waiting to see what the outlook is going to be going forward, and then over a period of time those prices may be adjusted. So it's all about the long-term game in terms of fuel. There is an immediate impact on the consumer in terms of what he or she puts into their vehicle. But in terms of the decreases, again, unfortunately, that's a long-term gain, which is exactly why, as the AA, we'd like to see these types of decreases being sustained over a period of time. I think we live in hope at the moment, Marcel.
Indeed we do. Thank you so much, Leighton Beard from the Automobile Association of South Africa. Thank you so much, and always being available to give us some insight into a very important thing for all of us here in South Africa.